Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back on another video from Chuck, and today we are checking out the 10 deadliest Bleach characters. I don't know how I've missed this, but love me some Bleach content. Really can't wait for the anime to come back later in the year. Let's keep getting the hype going.
The early 2000s were quite significant in the anime community as they brought in the original Holy Shonen Trinity in televised form, comprising of Naruto, One Piece, and of course Bleach.
Yeah,
which
the
after
big three.
years will finally have the intense Quincy war arc
Whoop!
and its iconic
Bring
battles
it!
animated.
Bring it!
Ichigo Kurosaki, the main character of the series, encounters multiple obstacles in his journey regarding the duality of his soul and complicated heritage that gave rise to his very special capabilities. Along the way, he and his allies face off against overwhelmingly powerful, cunning, and outright broken-ass characters.
Cunning is one heck of a way to describe Aizen as. He's a genius.
To senescence ruling colonies that can rot away their surroundings.
He is dangerous.
Sadistic, creepy scientists. And of course, to an abstract type entity that can reform and destroy entire realms, the Bleach universe has no shortage of candidates when it comes to beings that can quickly end your life.
Yep, definitely.
So, in this video, I will briefly cover some of the characters within the manga who I believe stand out in one way or another.
Oh my god, some of those Quincy's have got ridiculous powers as well.
And obviously there will be spoilers ahead, but be sure to subscribe if you are a Bleach fan. So, without further ado, let's check out why you would not survive in the Bleach universe. First up is the Vasto Lorde, the hollow deep inside Ichigo's soul that managed to break out when he was on the brink of death in the battle against the legendary and nihilistic Espada, Ukiura.
Mate, what a fight.
One of Sosuke Aizen's most trusted foot soldiers that would help him in his plans of world domination. But before Ichigo had to storm the castle of Las Noches and face one of his iconic enemies, he had to learn and hone in on his Soul Reaper powers to save his friend Rukia from being executed. Of course, such a task was very demanding since multiple people stood in his way, including Rukia's big brother figure, Byakuya Kuchiki.
Yeah.
Even after
when he manages to get him, it's like, yo, and then Aizen.
The million razor-sharp pedal-wielding nobleman pushed him to the point that his hollow took command and made him lose control with a stylish face mask to go with it.
So cool.
But when
so freaking cool.
Was extremely dire and he, came down with a case of
no heart. Case of death. Casual case of death.
This majestic evolution known as the Vasto Lorde
so sick.
Is on this list because of its overwhelming speed and
Ukiura had no chance, man.
That would likely be able to destroy all civilization on Earth.
Ukiura was absolutely wrecking him, and then it's just,
For starters, even the lower-ranked Espada at the time like Grimmjow and Numero 6 was able to fire a Gran Rey Zero, a light-based energy attack so powerful that it actively bent space-time and was stated by Ukiura as being able to destroy, or at least heavily damage, Las Noches itself. A city so big that if you walked towards one of its gates for several days, it would still seem far away.
Yeah, it's
huge.
At
this point, Grimmjow was far superior to the Ichigo who managed to block the Sokyoku Blade, a tool of execution so powerful that it could destroy the entire Serite, which although is also a huge city and resembles its own country,
even with faster Shumpo, it would have taken days to reach a gate, right?
Ukiura was so powerful that even in his base, he could still keep up with a hollowified Bankai Ichigo, who previously had a tough battle with a transformed Grimmjow, who would logically be more powerful than the base Grimmjow that could already endanger the stability of Las Noches. The series doesn't give us an exact multiplier for the Resurrección, the sword release of an Espada. We know it is at least comparable, if not superior, to a Soul Reaper's Bankai, which in most circumstances increases combat capabilities such as speed, strength, or defense by a factor of 5
Stats go up, yo.
Ukiura, who was already stronger than a transformed Grimmjow, could access 2 more transformations and energy attacks, such as the Cero Oscuras and the Lanza de Relámpago, which would multiply his power by well over 100 times. And despite having such immense power, the Vasto Lorde sliced him apart, pushed his strongest attack with his hands, and blasted his body to smithereens to the point that he faded away into dust.
So sick.
Oh, and you know what the crazy thing is? This demonic form of Ichigo wasn't even at half power due to his Soul Reaper clothing being tattered, which represents a Soul Reaper's power.
So mad.
What is more, Ichigo eventually mastered Vasto Lorde and combined it with the other parts of his soul to become even more powerful in the battle against his father in the darkness, Yuha. Among all of the captains in the Soul Society, by far one of the strongest ones was Genryusai Yamamoto.
Yamamoto was a beast.
With over 1,000 years of experience,
like, Aizen had a Espada made just to try and hold him back, didn't he?
State, Zanka no Dachi, could reach over 15 million degrees.
It gets very, very hot. Very hot,
as the sun
very
itself. In fact, it was so hot that it started
hot?
evaporating all of the water in the Soul Society and threatened to destroy it entirely. Which can be argued to be a planetary, if not even an universe-sized realm.
Jeez.
Even if you were capable of enduring the intense heat of his blade or seal it away like Aizen managed to do, Old Man Yama can roll up in other ways, as he is a master of defensive and offensive Kido spells, and is exemplary
Don't
in
mess
hand-to-hand
with Yamamoto,
combat,
yo.
as he showcased by completely crushing apart Wonderwise.
Yeah, who was made to, like, fight him.
Because he can also summon the trillions of souls that he executed over the years.
My god, what a technique.
To his opponent. Yamamoto was so overpowered that even the big bad antagonists like Sosuke Aizen, who slapped away multiple captains and ruled over the Espada, and the Quincy god Watch, had to take heavy precautions against him despite having only one arm. Suffice to say, if he were to go rogue, he would certainly be able to life wipe the Earth, and that is just the least of our worries. Next up is one of the strongest Espada under Aizen's
Baragon.
over the very aspect of
I think,
aging.
Clyde did a video not too long ago on Baragon, didn't he?
The thing that makes his royal spooky skeleton scary is not only his appearance, but
his
abilities
abilities
that made it very difficult to put him down. You see, Baragon's body is covered by a type of temporal field that heavily slows down the physical strikes of his opponents, allowing him to land a fatal blow or touch an opponent to rot away their limbs to the bone.
Ages them, yeah.
You might think that staying the hell away from this regal menace would be effective, but not really, because Baragon can use his Respida ability, a death cloud that can rot away living and non-living material, which even one of the fastest characters in the series, Soifon,
had difficulty getting away from,
was unable to evade it. Although a character with superior spiritual pressure could likely negate this ability, most attacks wouldn't even work because he could just dissolve it.
It just speeds up the aging process of it,
defensive layers and shields made from spirit energy prove fruitless, and force the heroes to use his own power against him by teleporting living material into him, causing his own body to disintegrate into nothingness.
Crazy.
Pretty ironic, right? But yeah, I mean, Kiora and the gun-wielding Stark were superior in raw power and speed, but Baragon certainly had the edge in lethality.
Yeah.
Speaking of dissolving enemies to the bone, another hyper-lethal ability was showcased by Retsu Unohana, who was also known as Yachiro Unohana, and became the first Kenpachi, a title that was only granted to the most monstrous Soul Reapers. At first, Unohana was portrayed as being a very potent healer, as her 4th Division was tasked with rehabilitating and tending to the wounds.
Yeah, but what was her deal later on? I can't remember.
But this merely covered up the fact that her true talent was for taking lives and throwing hands with her sword. It wouldn't be until the Quincy invasion that Unohana was revealed as being one of the most savage and strongest soul.
Yeah, don't she like keep killing Kenpachi and bringing him back?
To seal away his power for the sake of having enjoyable and difficult battles. Because he believed that if he were to beat Unohana, he wouldn't have anyone to beat, and in effect would lose his lust for battle. The ironic thing about Unohana is that although her Shikai was focused on healing, her Bankai, Minazuki, releases a very potent acid that, like Baragon's ability, rots away living material. And she used this in conjunction with her healing to defeat and bring Kenpachi Zaraki back from the dead over and over again.
Yeah, keep making him stronger,
dissolve his mental block and transform him into becoming the strongest Kenpachi
he could possibly be,
Yachiro Unohana,
and then he gets his Bankai and it's like, whoa! That's gonna be so sick to see in the anime.
Kisuke Urahara's Kido mastery, and was considered by Yamamoto
to be basically a tank healer.
He ordered her to stay put when the Quincy's invaded the Soul Society. Also, she was pretty much the only character smart enough to know that something sus was definitely up with Aizen's fake body that tricked everyone into thinking that he was truly dead. Thanks to Unohana's sacrifice, the next contender on our list proves why you definitely wouldn't survive facing this absolute and arguably the most powerful pure Soul Reaper in existence, Kenpachi Zaraki. Due to growing up in the most dangerous section of the Rukongai, a district in the Soul Society, Zaraki was forced to fight for his life from a young age, to the point that he had slain countless souls and eventually found himself face to face with Yachiro Unohana. Due to this this aforementioned mental block, Zaraki was not able to fight at his full potential until the Quincy arc, but even then, he was constantly regarded as being a monster.
Well, yeah, it wasn't he on the watch list from Aizen when they invaded?
Court hesitated to teach him kendo, a technique which enhances a sword's cutting power by holding it with two hands.
Yeah.
Although other captains
I'll hold it with my other hand now.
Were gifted at Kido spells Shunpo, the speed-based combat style of Soul Reapers, Kenpachi didn't find it important to learn such animes.
Yeah, he doesn't care, does he?
Him, only his raw power and way of the sword mattered in combat. If you have seen Invincible or Dragon Ball Z, it is fair to say that if the combat-to-loving Battle Beast and the legendary Super Saiyan Broly were Soul Reapers,
I'd definitely give him that.
Zaraki was so confident with his power that to enjoy himself in battle, he would actively nerf himself by wearing bells to let his opponent
hear him
of his whereabouts,
and the eye patch.
He would wear an eye patch that would constantly feed
Drain
on his
energy,
spiritual pressure. From stalemating Ichigo to cutting apart the highly durable Noitora and the Espada with more raw power than Ukiura called the Yami, he was certainly no pushover. Although several characters have endured nasty wounds in the series, I mean, it's called Bleach for a reason for how often they have to clean their bloody clothes, Kenpachi is by far the hardiest mofo to kill, because even if you were strong enough to cut him countless times, rip holes in his gut, or throw him into space and rupture his organs, the monster of the Soul Society would laugh and keep fighting as if he were just a small flesh wound. Hell,
sometimes he takes attacks on purpose, doesn't he?
Peerless Aizen that bodied a bunch of captains implied that, as a precaution, he would have needed to have fused with the Hokyoku, a breakdown sphere with pseudo-reality warping properties, to evolve and confidently fight Zaraki at his potential heights. And the really scary part, well, Kenpachi eventually obtained a Shikai and a Bankai, which allowed him to cut apart a massive meteor with ease and temporarily kill off one of the strongest Quincy's under Uwatch's army, Gerard Valkyrie. To maintain a balance within the cosmos, the Soul Reapers were tasked with the purifying and recycling of souls, but the Quincy's, on the other hand, wanted to exterminate them since they believed that the monstrous-looking hollows were not worthy of being purified. Because of this, the Soul Reapers and Quincy's fundamentally disagreed, had a lot of beef, and
fought.
War, which ended in the apparent genocide of the bow-wielding beings.
That's what they thought.
However, a few years after the iconic battle between the transcendent Aizen and an Ichigo who surpassed the hellish firepower of his Vastolorde form, the Quincy's returned from near extinction to enact revenge on Old Man Yama and the entire Soul Society in a ruthless manner, eclipsing the evil of Sosuke Aizen himself. Uwatch, the son of the Soul King who wanted to break apart and morph the Bleach multiverse into his own image, assembled and endowed his foot soldiers with magnificent abilities that would prove to be quite a handful for even the very best of the Soul Society.
They're ridiculous, man. They are ridiculous.
With crazy abilities that, could fit in this video, and some were clearly more powerful than others, but the one that I believe to be the spookiest is Asnod, who showcased how big of a deal the Quincy's were by nearly killing off Byakuya Kushiki as he grinded his organs to shreds with his own Bankai that he stole. Asnod's designation was F, the Fear, which allows him to manipulate the deepest and most primal force that all living beings abide by, and that is the fear of death, suffering, and pain. By firing his thorns, if they so much as made contact with your skin, it would drive you to insanity by making you doubt everything.
I suppose that's a crazy ability,
and dissolve all of your rational thought. Kill. Thanks to this ability,
nice
he was
Halo
able to
reference
kill off numerous Soul Reapers with ease, and most impressively, he was able to make the hard-ass and stoic Byakuya Kuchiki fall into despair. Which is certainly not an easy thing to do, because if you know Byakuya, he does have incredible willpower, which allows
he really does, so they were showing that. They're using a heck of an example of why the ability is so effective.
Even if you were like the most hard-ass edgelord that wasn't scared of anything, it wouldn't matter, because his thorns attacked a primal fear that is based not on emotions and rationality, but instinct. So, in order to counter Asnod's ability and avenge her brother's defeat, Rukia Kuchiki believed that by freezing her cells and essentially lacking life, she would have been able to come out on top straight away, but unfortunately that was not the case. Because despite being frozen to absolute zero temperatures in which molecules cannot move, Asnod's willpower pushed him to break out of this prison of ice and unleash his Vollständig, which is basically a Quincy's equivalent of a Bankai or a Resurrection. With this really scary form known as
They're all
Tartaropodas,
pretty ridiculous as well. Like,
became even more cryptic and stepped up his manipulation
whoa.
of fear to the next
Can't
level.
wait to see these animated,
In
man.
spite of the fact that Rukia's cells were frozen, her optical nerves were still intact, which allowed Asnod to terrorize her very soul by merely glancing at him once. So you're probably thinking, oh well, I just don't look at him then.
Yeah.
But to make matters worse, he can also create a large dome around his opponent with numerous eyes to further ensure that they would fall into despair.
Damn. Scary.
Amidst the Quincy's, only 4 were chosen by U-Watch to serve as his elite guards known as the Schutzstaffel or Star Knights. One of them is called Gerard Valkyrie,
Jesus, here
the
we go.
host of the Soul King's Heart, and was mad overpowered in a multitude of ways.
Just couldn't kill him.
During U-Watch's ascent to the Soul King's
Every time he
palace,
died, he just
and
grew
his
bigger
royal
than me.
guards were met by Squad Zero, a group of ancient Soul Reapers said to be
That
more
did
powerful
nothing.
than all the 13 divisions combined.
They were an
Which,
absolute
although
waste
that
of
claim was
time.
pretty questionable, they were still very formidable opponents. Unfortunately, once Yuha bestowed them with more power, which was implied to be their own from the very beginning, Gerard and the others were able to make short work of these really powerful Soul Reapers, while Yuha settled his beef with the strongest Soul Reaper at the time, Ichibei. Like with Doomsday from DC Comics, killing Gerard only made him harder, better, faster, and stronger. Because even after he was cut down repeatedly, he still came back
just
near
keeps
instantly
growing.
and forced Byakuya, Toshiro's improved Ice Bankai, the Visored, and eye patchless Kenpachi Zaraki to work together against him.
Which is
But
just
Gerard's
ridiculous.
ability, the Miracle, allows him to gain immense power under seemingly impossible conditions of victory. In other words, the more dire the situation, the more luck he would obtain in battle. For him, the impossible becomes very possible. That is not even the worst part, because if you were to damage his blade that embodies hope itself, you would receive the damage in return, which allowed Gerard to overwhelm Kenpachi.
Yeah, because he gives so much.
The devilish appearance of an Oni to slice him in half. And you would think that would work, but no, because Gerard still came back to life far more powerful than before, to the point that Toshiro stated that his previous incarnation didn't even hold a candle to it. In effect, all of their ultimate attacks and last-ditch efforts proved to be futile, and their death seemed pretty certain.
So
but of
mental.
course, plot bullshit happened. As
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's like, what would have happened if Iwak
powerful.
didn't take everyone's
Basically,
abilities
if you were to
back?
combine Kenpachi's raw power, Master Chief's luck, and SCP-682's adaptability, this sword
I don't know about the
and
SCPs, I'm sorry, I don't know.
would certainly fit that description. I think really the only way you could kill him is by vaporizing his body
Every
entirely.
single,
But
like
knowing
cell,
his
yeah.
power, I doubt that would work either. In the very early days of the Bleach cosmos, there existed a being known as the Soul King, who manipulated and reformed the vast space-time into different realms, known as the world of the living, which can be argued to either be the planet Earth or our universe. The Soul Society, which mirrors it, Wakamundo, the Kingdom of Hollows, and finally the Dangai, a realm cut from time-space itself that Ichigo trained under to obtain the final Getsuga Tensho to defeat the seemingly unstoppable Aizen. With the goal to create a world without the fear of death, Yuwatch wanted to absorb the power of his father and collapse all of these universes to start anew, but in his way stood several obstacles. With the exception of Gerard, Valkyrie, and Perdita, the left hand of the Soul King, Yuwatch endowed the Quincy's with their abilities, and due to that, he would have Asnod's Sphere, Bazby's Fire Manipulation, which was powerful enough to somewhat minimize the effects of Yamamoto's flames, and Lily Barrow's ability to pierce through seemingly anything that helped end Squad Zero's resistance. Theoretically, he should have all of their abilities, including Gerard's Miracle and Perdita's Evolution, but he never really used them in battle. In a way, you could think of him kind of like the Shang Tsung or the Kamen Rider Decade of, Bleach, because he basically jacks people's abilities and
takes everything.
can use them as well. Out of all of the Stern Ritter at the time, only Yuwatch was powerful enough to steal Yamamoto's searing hot Bankai and cut him down ruthlessly after he was tricked into fighting a body double. The same one, by the way, that casually took care of Kenpachi. Once he managed to subdue most of Squad Zero, Ichibei, whose ability can strip the power of names, stood in his way and gave him a very tough battle. The thing with Ichibei is that he was so powerful that he could not only literally take colors and use them as an attack, but he could also cut your power in half,
his ability was
or the
weird,
function
man.
of whatever he cut. And even after Ichibei erased Yuha's name and cut his power in half, Yuha was like, no bitch, and simply replenished his lost power and unveiled a hint of his
It really was like that, wasn't it? It's like, nah, you tried.
The royal palace at last.
Zero Division was rubbish, man.
Thanks to the trademark Quincy abilities known as Blut Vena and Blut Arteria, Yuwatch can enhance his defense, attack, and use these pathways to actively manipulate an opponent's limbs against their will, like he did to Ichigo, in order to cut down a weakened Soul King. Who, by the way, even in that state, was still holding the multiverse together.
Together, so, yeah, it's crazy.
Universal scaling, I'm just saying. When Yuwatch opened his eyes after a millennia, he unveiled his true power, known as the Almighty, which is so broken. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
It allows him to witness and actively change countless futures on a whim, add traps on the battlefield where he knows his opponent will be,
like how'd you fight that?
Like SCP-682, but on steroids. Abilities that seem to affect him at first would become less effective, if not ineffective outright, thanks to his adaptability. Although Aizen in a merged Hollow Quincy Fullbring Soul Reaper Saiyan Viltrumite whatever form each
everything
were able to keep up with him and damage him, and at one point Ichigo even killed him, it didn't matter because he can also rewrite futures in which he had died. Really, the only way that Yuwatch was able to be stopped was due to a very special kind of bullshit metal that temporarily halted his powers. And thanks to
that did come out of nowhere, didn't it? It's like, oh, okay.
Was able to cut him down
Plot.
And save the cosmos at last. Oh, actually, psych, because some remnants of Yuwatch's power were still around years after. So I don't know what the hell Kubo was on when he was writing this character, because he is way too OP.
Yeah,
and
really,
is
it's ridiculous.
The most OP character in the whole franchise. Okay, when were you under the impression that I wasn't going to mention the evil and manipulative mastermind, Sosuke Aizen? Although Yuwatch was indeed a much larger threat, I believe that Aizen deserved recognition due to his insane intellect that was only rivaled by Kisuke Uehara.
Everything.
Most notably, the way that he would emotionally and mentally fight with his opponents to dissolve any semblance of control and confidence that they thought they had. Sure, Sama started out as a geeky-looking captain of the Soul Society.
Yeah, but then he slicked his hair back and took his glasses off and he looked cool.
Effectively forming a false image of himself that fooled virtually everyone that worked with him. His goal was not only to transcend the limitations of Soul Reapers and Hollows alike, but to raid the royal palace and dethrone the Soul King himself. It was because of Aizen's obsession with transcendence that he created a Hollow Soul Reaper prototype known as White, which after fusing itself with the soul of Ichigo's mother, manifested into him once he was born. And although White was a relative success, Aizen still thought that he needed the Hogyoku. Unlike most Soul Reapers that excel in one or two areas of combat, Aizen is a master of sword fighting, Shunpo, hand-to-hand combat.
Got it all down. He's an all-rounder.
As he is able to use high-level ones such as Kuro Hitsugi, a black coffin with a gravitational torrent that actively bends time and space itself, even without chanting it. Which, to explain it another way, it would be like if a Harry Potter character used one of the unforgivable curses or some other high-level spell without waving their wand or actively chanting its name out loud.
Whoa.
One of his trademark abilities is a
That's insane.
known as Kyoka Suigetsu, complete hypnosis that alters the five senses after just looking at his blade once. With it, he could create complex illusions and hide his movements so clean that even the fastest and brightest of the Soul Society were left befuddled by his big brain plays.
Yeah, it's just,
this ability
it was
is
incredible.
So effective that he fooled the numerous captains into thinking
fighting
that they
each other.
were fighting him the entire time,
Yeah.
but they had actually been fighting some random chick that was really in the story to get cut down. But anyways, in effect, apart from Ichigo, only Yamamoto was a significant threat, but due to his excellent planning and precautions, he was able to seal away his flames and come out on top. By fusing himself with the Hogyoku, which manipulates one's innermost desires, Aizen underwent through numerous
a lot of transformations, which were just like crazy.
To the point that he considered himself a higher dimensional being entirely. Which, given how the power creep in the story developed, is not that far-fetched.
No, it's quite easy to believe, yeah.
It wasn't until Ichigo obtained his own transcendent power that Aizen was finally defeated and sentenced to prison for over 20,000 years in the Mukin, a seemingly infinite, if not outright infinite space, reserved for the biggest and baddest criminals in the Soul Society that were immortal. But of course, due to the large threats that Yuwatch presented, Shunsui, who became the captain commander after Yamamoto's death, thought it would be necessary to fight evil with evil, regardless of the repercussions. Despite being in the Mukin for years, Aizen surpassed the level of power that he obtained from the Hogyoku, and even while being heavily sealed, he was able to confuse Yuwatch's track of time.
Yeah, which is crazy. He's still got it going on. It's like, whoa.
But Aizen refused to because submitting to another person was not his style. So for the chance to be free for a time, he assisted Ichigo in the final battle with the abstract entity. Alongside Kenpachi Zaraki, Kisuke Urahara, Ichigo, and Ichibei, Aizen was regarded as a war potential by Yuwatch due to his overwhelming Ryatsu that would passively crush the souls of most beings.
This is crazy.
And when Yuwatch
just a casual little thing.
The Soul King to eat away at the Soul Society and the Shinigami, Aizen just by sitting there was casually able to crush them all, which is insane because several
isn't he like, I'll just shoot it down, I'll shoot that down from here.
For good. Although Aizen's power itself was not suppressed, his movement and the range as to which he could use his power were limited thanks to the numerous seals he still had placed on him. Even so, Aizen's Kyokasu Getsu was able to affect Yuwatch to the point that he confused him with Ichigo, which gave the real Ichigo a chance to strike him down. Suffice to say, defeating Aizen is a very, very hard thing to do, and the fact that even while nerfed, he was able to give Yuwatch trouble is why I consider him to be the best villain in the series,
one
definitely. Of the best villains hands down that I've had the pleasure of learning about. Oh yeah, and we never saw his Bankai, if he even has one to begin with. But if he does have one, that is mad spooky to think about. Finally, we get to who I believe to be the most sketchy character in the series, and that is Mayuri Kurotsuchi, the evil scientist of the Soul Society, who is very, very scary indeed.
He is creepy as hell.
To give you an idea of the get-go about how chilling he is, if I were to invade Soul Society and I was met by Kenpachi, Aizen, or Yamamoto, or even Asnod, I would rather get hypnotized or burnt down to a crisp than deal with what Mayuri would do to me. And
he's proper weird about his, fighting his opponents.
Mayuri's main antic in the Soul Society was to research, create groundbreaking technology, and to observe whatever he came across that seemed
what did he do to this guy? He trapped him, didn't he?
Since he learned a lot from Kisuke Urahara,
made time seem very, very slow to him.
Hogyoku, Mayuri quickly became one of the smartest characters in the series, but with that intelligence came a lot of morbidity and a very morally skewed compass in the name of science. To him, everyone, including himself, were meant to be modified and researched on in one way or another. He might not look like much, he's not a powerhouse like Kenpachi or a keto spammer like Urahara, but he is certainly a very tough opponent to defeat due to his preparations, his ability to analyze and counter abilities on the get-go, and of course, thanks to his nifty gadgets. For example, he's equipped with nerve paralyzers that manage to work on Kenpachi, vials to instantly regenerate flesh, and to turn himself into liquid to escape by stabbing himself. Oh yeah, remember those seals that restricted Aizen's movement and the range of his spiritual pressure?
Yeah.
Guess who made those?
Of course.
Mayuri. And he also made the eye patch that would drain Kenpachi's immense spiritual energy. So technologically speaking,
Mayuri
is able to manipulate or somewhat subdue these really crazy levels of power. From using Soul Reapers as living bombs to beating the f*** out of his pseudo-daughter Nemu for interfering in battle and actively bragging to Udiyu about torturing and using his ancestors as lab rats, it was pretty clear from the get-go that Mayuri valued science over sentimentality.
Definitely.
His Shikai release, Ashisoki Jizo, can immobilize opponents by simply slashing them once, but he made it so that one would still be able to feel the pain despite their nerves being paralyzed. In the battle with the 8th Espada, Sasaya Laporo Grans, who was also a mad scientist, Mayuri showed his true terror. Before his arrival to Wekamundo, Sasaya Laporo had his way with Udiyu and Renji's organs as he essentially made voodoo dolls to crush them from the inside. However, Mayuri was not without his intel, as he had, without consent, applied spy cameras on Udiyu to learn of the Espada's abilities extremely quickly and find a counter to them, and as a result, literally stowed away his organs and tendons before the battle.
Which is so
when Sasaya
weird.
Laporo was having the time of his life torturing Mayuri over and over again, Mayuri simply gave him a condescending look and claimed that his ability was boring and carried on like nothing happened. On top of that, when his lieutenant, Nemu's body was violently infiltrated by Sasaya Laporo's need for rebirth, he didn't even show a hint of terror towards the Espada, as he simply smiled at Sasaya Laporo's futile attempts to trigger him. as he revealed to him that he had laced Emu's organs with medicine, which heavily skewed Sazai-Laporo's senses to the point that everything seemed extremely slow.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, yeah, he slowed everything down for him.
You see, one of his medicines made it so that the mad scientist's perception was amplified to superhuman levels, but at the cost of his body being unable to match it. So, to finish off the espada, Mayuri stabbed him through the heart, with Sazai being unable to do anything but wish for death as his agony seemed to last
I just wait for it, yeah.
Although
Crazy.
his death only took a few seconds or minutes on screen,
to him
it seemed like an
yeah.
entire centuries. And to pour even more salt on the wound, Mayuri destroyed his ideal that perfection was everything. Because if something was perfect, it would infer that it couldn't progress and become even better. And because of that, Mayuri came out on top.
Damn.
It certainly
Guy's
does
crazy.
make sense that he would have a
Guy's
fascination
crazy.
with mind-altering agents due to the fact that his Bankai, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo, can spew out very potent venom that works even if you don't breathe it in directly. However, it can be repelled with sufficiently high levels of spiritual pressure. To make matters worse, even if you were to figure out an antidote to his poison and medication for a second encounter, you'd be shit out of luck because he always changes the composition of whatever he's using, and of course, is immune to them. Mayuri is the only character that scientifically modified his Zanpakuto to automatically counter blades that came within range of him, and he later upgraded his Bankai to be able to literally give birth to another Bankai to counter an opponent and their abilities based on the data that
absolutely mental.
During the Quincy War arc, the mass favorite Toshiro became conflicted with a zombification process that Best Girl or Best Guy Giselle put him and other captains through. In response, Mayuri inflicted him with, of course, another drug. One that made it so that even if Toshiro managed to kill him off from his point of view, it would simply put him into a time loop, preventing him from moving forward and be forced to stand down against the evil scientist, becoming insane and paralyzed in the process. Okay, well, you might be thinking, what if you were, to steal and use his Bankai against him?
Yeah.
Nope, it still wouldn't work, because Mayuri modified his Bankai to self-destruct if it were to ever lash out at him.
Crazy.
In essence, the only way to survive against Mayuri is to
The guy plans for everything. The guy plans for everything.
And attempt to finish him off as soon as possible. Because to Mayuri, just a few seconds is more than enough time to think of a counter to vast majority of threats. Sure, you watch and Aizen are more overpowered and harder to put down, but Mayuri is a whole separate terror entirely because to
I
him,
agree with him
there is no
this,
moral principle that he wouldn't overstep for the sake of victory and for greater knowledge. But yeah, fellas, there you go. These are some of the deadliest characters in the franchise, and there are many more that I would recommend you check out by reading Bleach, and hopefully you can get caught up by the time the anime comes out.
1,000 Year Blood War.
Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace out.
Cool. I really can't wait. There's going to be so many decent fights just animated and it's going to look sick. And Quincy's going to look sick and Aizen's going to go back. Boom. But yeah, there's some deadly characters. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got a cold. It's killing me off. And it's not the old thingy I test every day. Ugh. Anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, we upload links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all you guys to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for that. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys, just all you guys, next time.